Hello, dear children. Today I'm going to explain this chapter called The Invention of Vita-Wonk. This is a story taken for academic use for class 7 NCERT. So the lesson begins, this story is actually part of a very big book called The Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You also must have seen the movie. Um, and this is about Mr. Willy Wonka, who is an inventor, and his invention right now is not working, and he needs to find a solution to make his invention better. Okay, so let's see what are some of the questions that are used in this chapter before the explanation. Now, who are the oldest people you know? What are the oldest things you have in your house, in your city, town, or village? How old are they? Well, the oldest people that I know is my grandmother, who is like 101-year old. And I think she is the one living being who is oldest in my house. Other than that, I think I also have my grandfather's picture in my house when he was a baby. So that could be that could possibly be the oldest thing that I have in my house. Why don't you also think about things that are oldest in your house? Now, let's move on to the chapter, The Invention of Vita-Wonk. Mr. Willy Wonka begins by inviting Wonka Vite, which makes people younger. But Wonka Vite is too strong. Some people disappear because their age becomes minus. One person actually becomes minus 87, which means he's got to wait 87 years before he can come back. So Mr. Willy Wonka is an inventor. He's also a chocolatier. He has made different kinds of chocolates, and people used to savor on these chocolates. But since he's an inventor by heart, he has just invented a medicine or a drink called the Wonka Vite. However, it has a problem. It has a side effect. Although it is meant to make people younger, the effect is too strong for some time and then they disappear or vanish. You don't see that person anymore. So what is Wonka Vite supposed to do? Wonka Vite is supposed to make one person, say for example, if a person is 30 years old, Wonka Vite is supposed to make him maybe 20 years old. Yeah, that looks good. But what about if you are 30, if you're 30 years old and after having Wonka Vite, you actually vanish. You become 0 years. It will take you 30 more years to come back. So that's what is told here. So a person became minus 87 and now he's going to take another 87 years to actually come back to life. And so that's a very big problem. The main characters in the story are Mr. Willy Wonka and a boy called Charlie. If you watch the movie or if you read this book written by Roald Dahl, you would understand the nature of these characters. So Charlie is a very poor boy, and he has just won a lottery to enter Mr. Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And now Mr. Willy Wonka is telling him his stories. Mr. Willy Wonka said, so once again I rolled up. Once again, I squeezed my brain searching for the new recipe. I had to create age to make people old. Oldest. Haha. I cried for now. The ideas were beginning to come. What is the oldest living thing in the world? Mr. Wonka is asking this question to Charlie. What is the oldest living thing in the world? What lives longer than anything else? So he is asking this question to Charlie, and Charlie very promptly answers and says, a tree. A tree is the oldest thing. And Willy Wonka was very excited, and he said, right you are, Charlie, but what kind of a tree? Not the Douglas fir, not the oak, not the cedar. No, no, my boy, it is a tree called the bristlecone pine. So now, Mr. Willy Wonka is saying that, oh, it's not just any tree, but a very special tree called bristlecone pine tree, which is the oldest. It is a tree called the bristlecone pine, and it is found in the slopes of Wheeler Peak in Nevada, USA. So Nevada is a place in USA, and it's also a hill. So you find these trees in the slopes of this hill called the Wheeler Peak in Nevada. You can find bristlecone pines on the Wheeler Peak today that are over 4,000 years old. That old. This is fact, Charlie. Ask any dendrochronologist you like and look that word up in the dictionary when you get home. Will you please? So what do we mean by a dendrochronologist? So the Mr. Willy Wonka is asking Charlie to go home and find out about this, right? You can also do this, but anyways, I'm going to tell you who's a dendrochronologist. It could be a person who studies the age of a tree. So that started me off. I jumped into the great glass elevator and I rushed all over the world collecting special items from the oldest living things. So since he had a challenge, he had just made the Wonka Vite and it is not working. It is not making people younger, but not only making people younger, but it is also vanishing, making them disappear. So he had to find a solution to his problem. And so the solution would be to make people older this time, not younger. And for that, he needed a collection of things which are oldest in the world. Now, Mr. Willy Wonka, he doesn't have a car. He doesn't have a bike. Okay, he has a glass elevator. So elevator is like the lift that you see. We also call them lift in India. So he has a glass elevator. So the doors of this elevator are transparent and it can travel in the air as well. So he just has to press a button and within a fraction of time, he can be anywhere in the world that he wishes to be in. So Mr. Wonka gets into this glass elevator and travels throughout the world, all over the world, collecting special items from the oldest living things. What is the first thing that he collects? The first thing he collects is a pint of sap. Pint means a big glass or a big container of sap is the juice that comes out from a tree if you cut it. Just like, for example, if you accidentally it happens that you cut your hand, blood comes out. In the same way, from the tree trunk or the tree bark, sap comes out. And he collected the sap of a 4,000-year-old. So he collected a glass of juice that came out from the 4,000-year-old tree. The next thing that he collected was the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer called Petrovich Grigorovich. So this is a Russian name, so it could be a little difficult to pronounce, but you can still repeat after me and say it's Petrovich Grigorovich. He's a Russian farmer. The toenail means if you look at your feet, you have the toenails. So he took a clipping, only a part of his nail, just like if we have long nails and we cut it, we trim it, right? So he took a clipping of this, of the toes of toenail of this person, from a farmer from Russia who's called Petrovich Grigorovich. And number 3, he also got an egg laid by a 200-year-old tortoise belonging to the king of Tonga. So Tonga is a country, it's a nation, and he took an egg from a very old tortoise. The next thing he collected was the tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia. So a 51-year-old horse means something, right? We don't see horses that old. And after that, he also collected the whiskers of a 36-year-old cat. What is the cat's name? The cat's name is Crumpets. And the next thing he collected was an old flea. Flea is a small insect. It's a very small insect with little legs in it, and they are parasites who live and feed on another animal's body. So they suck the blood of another animal. So this flea actually lived on this cat called Crumpets. And just like the cat's age was 36-year-old, the flea was also 36-year-old. Usually insects don't survive for more than days or weeks, but this one survived for 36 years. That's quite a long time for a tiny insect. What is the next thing he collected? He collected a tail of a 2007-year-old giant rat from Tibet. So this is another country. So he has been to Russia, he has been to Tibet, he's been to USA, Nevada, right? So he's been to so many countries. Now he's in, he went to Tibet and he collected the tail of a very big rat. Giant means very large, very big or large. The next thing he collected was the black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl. So again, this is another animal that he's talking about, which lived on the mountain, lived in a mountain called Popocatépetl. The last thing he collected was the knuckle bones of a 700-year cataloo from Peru. Well, usually cataloos are a breed of dog. Just like in dogs, you have Doberman, you have say Saint Bernards and pugs and Rottweilers. In the same way, Cataloo is also a breed of dog, and this dog was extremely old, 700-year old, and he found the knuckle bones of this 700-year-old Cataloo. So it's not alive, but he has been buried for 700-year-old, and he took the knuckle bones of this dog. All over the world, Charlie, Mr. Wonka went on, I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them. A hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes there's no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping. Oh my God, that sounds nasty, isn't it? So he said that I met all the old things in this world, and sometimes I took some hair from some animal, sometimes I took an eyebrow, and I also scraped the jam that is between the toes of these animals. I tracked the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scrug, the polyfrog, the giant curlicue, the stinging slug, and the venomous squawker, who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. So he is naming some of these animals whose names we have never heard. So this is quite possible that these names are created for the readers to have a sense of variety. I mean, what kind of animals are these? You can also Google them and find out if these animals really exist or not. Venomous means poisonous. All right, stinging means the one which can use the slug. The slugs are usually not stinging, but they have two antennas, and just like the bees sting or bite, the slug is also a stinging slug. The slugs are very slow animals, or sometimes with the shell. They almost look like snails. Yeah. And he also found some venomous or poisonous creatures, and who could spit poison from 50 yards. So even if you're very far away, it could spit poison on you. And if the poison touches your skin, it could harm you in different ways. But there's no time to tell you about them all. Now, Charlie, let me just say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing, in my inventing room, I produced one tiny cup full of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 21-year-old Oompa Loompa, volunteered to see what happened. What did happen? Charlie asked. It was fantastic, cried Mr. Wonka. So, so Mr. Wonka is telling Charlie that finally he was successful in making his new invention, which instead of making the people younger, is now going to make the people older. Now, after he did all the experiments, finally he came up with a liquid which was oily and black, and he gave 4 drops of it to the Oompa Loompas. Now, children, I just wanted to tell you, if you have not watched the movie or if you have not read the book of Willy Wonka, just to let you know, Willy Wonka had these Oompa Loompas. These are short people, very short dwarfs that he found from a very thick forest. These Oompa Loompas work for him, and Mr. Willy Wonka gives them the cocoa beans, because they love eating cocoa beans. So instead of cocoa beans, these Oompa Loompa they serve Mr. Willy Wonka. So even here you would see that a Oompa Loompa volunteered to try his new invention, and Charlie was very excited to know the result. What did happen? He asked. And he said, it was fantastic. It actually worked. And how do we know that it works? So what happened to the Oompa Loompa after he had this? The moment he swallowed it, he began wrinkling. Old people have wrinkles. Have you seen that? You can't even iron them. If there is wrinkle in a shirt, you can iron it out. But if a person has wrinkles, it means that that person has become old and shriveling up all over, and his hair started dropping off and his teeth started falling out. So these are all the characteristics that an old person has. And before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. So the Oompa Loompa, who was very young, only 21 years old, but now he suddenly, after having his new invention, he became 75 years old. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita-Wonk invented. So it's interesting, isn't it? The first invention that he made was Wonka Vite. And now the second invention that he has made is a little different, but the names are very similar. So don't get confused. The name is Vita-Wonk this time. Okay. First is Wonka Vite, and the second one, which was a success, was Vita-Wonk. And that is how Vita-Wonk was invented. Now, here are a few questions. As you can see, the first question says, choose the right answer. Mr. Willy Wonka is a cook, an inventor, or a manager. What do you think? Yes, that's correct. He's an inventor. Wonka Vite makes people older or younger? Yes, that is correct. Wonka Vite makes people younger. Mr. Wonka wants to invent a new thing which will make people, that's right, older. Can anyone's age by it be a minus number? What does minus 18 mean? Well, minus 87 means that his age has become less by 87 years. So if the person was 87 years old, after having the Wonka Vite, he became minus 87. So he came down 86, 85, 84, 83, and like that, 1, and then 0, and then minus 87. Something like that, I'm sure. Yeah, so minus 87 means his age had reduced dramatically, a lot. Mr. Wonka begins by asking himself 2 questions. What are they? What is the oldest thing? and what lives for the longest time? So what are the two questions? You can also go back to the chapter and see. What is the oldest living thing in the world? What lives longer than anything else? These are the two questions he asked. All right, children. So that's the end of the explanation of this very interesting chapter called The Invention of Vita-Wonk. I understand there are more questions at the end. However, I would like you to try on your own and answer these questions if you're not able to answer the questions, and if you think that the explanation was not supportive enough for you to find the answers, please write back to me in the comment box and I'll be more than happy to reply. Okay, if you also want me to send you the answers, I will send them to you personally. Just put a request in the comment box and I'll be there. Thank you so much for being with me today, and I will see you very, very soon with a new chapter. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.